Losing your spouse is like standing in a house after a fire. Everything you once knew is still there, but nothing is the same. The silence feels heavy, the shadows grow longer, and in the midst of it all, you have to make decisions that could change your future, for better or worse. The problem is that grief clouds your judgment, and in those moments of vulnerability, many make costly mistakes, trusting promises that are never kept, clinging to things that only cause more pain, or making impulsive decisions that shape their future. No one warns you about these dangers until it's too late. Today, we're going to talk about those mistakes, 9 traps that can put your emotional, financial, and personal stability at risk if you don't know how to avoid them. And trust me, the last mistake on this list could completely change the way you see your future. I'm Gabriel, and in this space we speak openly and honestly about how to live with strength and purpose even in the hardest moments. Stay with me, because what you'll learn today could be the difference between a life full of setbacks or a life that, despite the pain, you continue building with dignity. Have you ever felt like the world is pushing you to move when all you want to do is stop? Losing a spouse isn't just an absence. It's an earthquake that shatters everything you once took for granted. And just as the dust begins to settle, life, or rather those around you, demand quick answers. What will you do with the house? How will you manage the money? Will you stay or move in with your children? These questions hit like icy gusts of wind when you're still trembling inside. But here's the trap. Grief clouds your judgment, and the decisions you make now could cost you more than you can imagine. Don't make rushed financial decisions. That's the first big mistake. Because when you're grieving, your mind doesn't think logically, it thinks in fear or guilt. And under the influence of either, it's easy to give in to outside pressure, trust the wrong people, or let go of things you still need. I've seen too many people sell their homes because they felt incapable of maintaining them, only to realize later that other solutions were possible. I've met widows who, pressured by children who only want to help, transfer assets or bank accounts without fully understanding the consequences, only to find out that regaining financial independence is nearly impossible. And then there are those who, drowning in sadness, seek refuge in unnecessary spending, impulsive trips, or loans that leave them even more vulnerable than before. Think of a sailor caught in a storm. If he panics and starts steering recklessly, he'll likely capsize his boat. But if he holds onto the wheel and waits for the worst to pass before deciding his course, he has a real chance of reaching a safe harbor. That's exactly what you need to do right now. Don't make decisions when the storm is at its peak. In Stoic philosophy, there's a fundamental principle. Don't act impulsively under the weight of emotions. Seneca said, "Haste is the cause of all mistakes," and in grief, this truth is amplified 1,000 times over. Right now, your mission isn't to fix everything, it's to protect yourself. Stop, breathe. Before signing anything, giving in to others' expectations, or making an irreversible move, give your mind time to cool down. Clarity doesn't come in the middle of the storm, it comes when the waters begin to calm. If someone pressures you to make a quick decision, question it. If you feel tempted to act just to escape the discomfort of the moment, resist. Because this is a turning point in your life. What you do now will shape not just your financial stability, but also your future peace of mind. And after a loss, that's exactly what you need most: peace. So hold onto the wheel tightly, because the storm will pass. And when it does, let it be you who chooses the direction, not fear. When the storm passes and silence settles in, you begin to notice another presence in your life: loneliness. But not just any loneliness, the kind that comes with empty promises and words that fade over time. At first, there are visits, calls, messages of support. Everyone tells you that you can count on them. If you need anything, I'm here, they say with apparent sincerity. But then, the days pass, routines resume, and you're left waiting for someone to remember that you're still here. The next big mistake we need to confront is blindly trusting the promises of family and friends. Not because they don't care about you, not because they're bad people, but because life moves on and people forget. They don't do it out of malice. They're simply caught up in their own lives, their own rhythms. And if you place all your emotional or financial security in something someone said in a moment of compassion, you risk realizing too late that words don't always turn into actions. It's an uncomfortable truth, but a necessary one. Losing a spouse doesn't just change your world, it changes how others see you. Some people distance themselves because they don't know how to handle your grief. Others step back because the role you once played in their life has shifted. And some stay close but with condescension, treating you as if you're suddenly incapable of making your own decisions. If you're not aware of this, you might fall into the trap of expecting too much from people who, in the end, have other priorities. Stoic philosophy teaches us that expectations are one of the greatest sources of suffering. Epictetus put it bluntly, "If you expect others to act as you wish, you are doomed to pain. If you accept that they will act according to their nature, you will be free." Applying this here means that you cannot build your future on the assumption that others will be there when you need them. Instead, start with the mindset that if help comes, it's a gift. But if it doesn't, you are already prepared to stand on your own. Think of the parable of the man who built his house on the rock and the one who built his on sand. The storm came for both, but only one endured. Building on rock means ensuring that your life, your decisions, your stability, your peace doesn't depend on the promises of others, but on what you can do for yourself. If help comes, be grateful, but if it doesn't, don't let it be the end of your world. Now is the time to ask yourself, am I expecting too much from others? Am I blindly trusting words that may disappear? If the answer is yes, it's time to make a change. Not with resentment, not with disappointment, but with the clarity that your best bet in this life is always yourself. Don't cling to words, build on actions. Because when loneliness sets in, what will truly sustain you won't be someone else's promise, but the strength you have cultivated within yourself. If you've understood that you can't rely on others' promises to sustain your life, now comes a harder question. What will you do with what lies ahead? Losing your spouse changes many things, but one thing remains untouched: your right to decide your future. The problem is that many people, trapped in pain and the inertia of years spent together, end up surrendering their own destiny without even realizing it. That's why we've reached the third point of this video. You cannot ignore your right to redefine your life. It doesn't matter how old you are or how many times you've heard that, at this stage, it's not worth changing. The time you have ahead is still yours, and how you live, it depends on whether you dare to question the story you've told yourself until now. The challenge is that when a relationship lasts for decades, identities become intertwined. We were going to do this. We always thought this way. We had these plans. But now that we no longer exists in the same way, and this is where many people freeze. They believe that moving in a new direction would be a betrayal of the memory of the person they lost. They think it's more respectful to remain in the shadow of what was rather than open themselves to what still could be. But tell me, do you think the person you loved would have wanted to see you fade away, anchored to a past that will never return? Or would they have wanted to see you find meaning, purpose, and a new way to move forward with dignity? Marcus Aurelius put it clearly: we must love our fate, not resist it. This doesn't mean resigning yourself to what has happened. It means accepting reality so you can transform it. Redefining your life doesn't mean forgetting. It means honoring what was by not letting pain consume everything. It means making space for new experiences, even if they hurt at first. Maybe you always wanted to move, but your spouse didn't. Perhaps there was a trip you dreamed of taking, but the right time never came. Or maybe it's something simpler. Changing your routine, meeting new people, exploring paths that once seemed distant. None of this is a betrayal. It is an act of love toward life itself. Imagine a garden you've tended for years. Some plants bloomed, others withered, but everything had a familiar order. Now suddenly, part of the garden is empty. You have two choices. Let it dry out, or dare to plant something new. What you choose to sow now is up to you. And if you choose to plant nothing, to leave the soil barren, then you've still made a decision, but one that leads only to emptiness. Life is that garden, and while you can't replant what you've lost, you still have the chance to fill the space with something meaningful. Now I want you to think about this. What part of your life have you put on hold out of fear or loyalty to the past? What decision could you make today to start reclaiming your right to write your own story? If any of this resonates with you, tell me in the comments where you're watching from and write the phrase, "My life still has purpose," because it does. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, now is the time. There are more reflections ahead, and the last one might completely change the way you see your place in this world. If you understand that you have the right and the responsibility to redefine your life after loss, then there's something else you need to consider: the space you choose to live in. Because often, sadness becomes an excuse to stay in the same place, even when that place is no longer right for you. And that brings us to the fourth point in this video. Don't hold on to the family home out of obligation or guilt. The home you built with your spouse isn't just a collection of walls. It's a stage filled with memories. Every corner has a story. Every piece of furniture seems to hold a part of the life you shared. It's natural to feel that leaving it would mean letting go of everything that once was. But here's the trap. What you lived isn't trapped within those walls. You don't need to keep an empty space to honor the love you had. Still, many people fall into the idea that leaving is a betrayal, or worse, they convince themselves that staying is their duty because that's how things were meant to be. But tell me, would your spouse have wanted to see you tied to a place that has become a burden? The family home often turns into an anchor that weighs you down more than it protects you. Financially, maintaining a large space filled with things you no longer use can become an emotional and economic strain. It's not uncommon for a home to feel too big, too silent, too overwhelming after losing a husband or wife. But the fear of letting go of the familiar keeps many people holding on, even when every day in that space only deepens their sense of loss. In Stoic philosophy, one of the most important lessons is learning to distinguish between what is within our control and what isn't. The death of a loved one is beyond our power, but how we choose to live afterward is entirely in our hands. Clinging to a house out of guilt or inertia means surrendering that power to a structure of bricks and cement instead of reclaiming it for yourself. Imagine carrying a backpack full of stones. At first, you might feel you have to carry it because it's a part of you, because letting it go would mean abandoning something important. But with every step, it gets heavier, wearing you down, limiting your ability to move freely. Now ask yourself, how many of those stones do you actually need? How many are there simply because you're afraid to put them down? The space you live in is that backpack. It can be a refuge, but it can also become a prison if you hold onto it for the wrong reasons. I'm not saying you should sell your home or move right away. What I'm saying is that you need to ask yourself honestly whether the place you're living is still the best one for this new stage of your life. Ask yourself, am I staying here because I truly want to, or because I'm afraid of what leaving would mean? If it's the latter, then it's time to rethink it. Because the house you shared with your spouse was a home. But that doesn't mean it's the only place where you can continue building your life. If you've made it this far, you already know that clinging to the past won't make the pain go away. But there's an even more dangerous mistake, one that, if ignored, could cost you not just your stability, but your dignity. And that is this. Do not neglect your finances out of fear of facing them, because ignoring reality won't change it. It will only leave you more vulnerable. Many people, after losing their spouse, fall into the trap of avoidance. They don't want to look at the numbers, don't want to check accounts, don't want to think about how they'll support themselves. Some, because they never handled the household finances and now feel incapable. Others, because the simple act of organizing paperwork is a painful reminder that their partner is gone, and so they put off the inevitable. Months go by without reviewing expenses, trusting that things will work themselves out. But life doesn't organize itself, and when reality finally hits, it hits even harder. I've seen widows who realized too late that the money they thought would be enough wasn't. Who relied on a pension as a safety net, not realizing that inflation, emergencies, or poor planning could turn that security into an illusion. I've seen older men who never learned to manage their own finances and ended up dependent on their children, who, despite good intentions, weren't always able or willing to support them. And worst of all, I've seen too many people run out of options because by the time they realized they needed to take control of their finances, it was already too late. Fear of facing your finances isn't just about money. It's about accepting that your future depends on you and no one else. It's easier to say, I was never good with numbers, than to sit down and learn. It's easier to assume someone else will handle things than to take responsibility for every expense, every income, every decision. But tell me, what choice do you think will give you more freedom? Because there is no greater dependency than financial dependency. There is no deeper anxiety than knowing you can't make your own decisions because you rely on the goodwill of others. Stoic philosophy teaches that control over our lives comes from controlling our actions. You can't control the global economy, but you can decide what to do with what you have. You can't go back and change how you managed your finances before, but you can start doing it right from this moment on. It doesn't matter if you've never handled the household budget, if you know nothing about investments, or if you're terrified of making a mistake. What matters is understanding that facing it now is your only option if you don't want to regret it later. Start with the basics, review what you have, what you spend, and what you truly need. Ask questions, learn, seek advice if necessary. But don't keep leaving your future up to chance or in the hands of others. Because the worst way to lose what you have is to pretend the problem doesn't exist. And the best way to honor the life you still have is to make sure you can live it with independence and with the certainty that no one else will be making decisions for you. If taking control of your finances is a matter of dignity, there's another trap that can steal something even more valuable: your time. Because if you don't decide what to do with your life now, others will decide for you. And that brings us to the sixth point of this video. Don't let others dictate how you spend your time. I want you to picture your life 5, 10, or even 20 years from now. Where are you? What are you doing? Are you in control of your day, or are you just following the rhythm that others have set for you? Because many people, after losing their spouse, fall into a dangerous pattern. They start living according to what others expect of them. They become the grandparent who's always available to babysit, the family member who takes on responsibilities no one else wants, the friend who never says no. And at first, they believe they're being useful, that they have a purpose. But over time, the feeling of being replaceable, of existing purely for convenience, becomes unbearable. If you don't realize it soon enough, one day you'll wake up and realize your life is no longer your own. You'll start each morning with a routine you didn't choose, with obligations you took on out of duty, with the sinking realization that while the world keeps turning, you exist only to meet other people's needs. And when the moment comes when you want to reclaim your space, when you finally try to say, "I can't today," you'll find that no one is willing to hear it. Because when you spend years without setting boundaries, people assume you don't have any, and then you'll face one of the greatest frustrations of getting older, realizing that you gave everything to everyone, and now that you need time for yourself, no one understands why it bothers you to keep giving it away. The problem isn't helping others. The problem is losing yourself in the process. Because your time is the one thing you will never get back. You can earn more money, make new friends, even reinvent yourself, but you can't go back and reclaim the years you gave away without question. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Men live as if they were immortal, and only when the end approaches do they realize how much time they wasted on trivialities." Don't wait until it's too late to realize that your life deserves more than being an extension of other people's schedules. Ask yourself with brutal honesty, how much of what you do each day is truly your choice, and how much is just the result of not saying no when you should have? This isn't about rejecting the people you love. It's about understanding that love doesn't mean disappearing to please others. Start making decisions for yourself. Take back control of your time. Because if you don't do it now, there will come a day when you'll regret not living life on your own terms. If you understand that your time is yours and no one else should decide how you spend it, then there's one final trap you must avoid, one that can catch even those strong enough to sidestep all the others. Because when loneliness tightens its grip and the emptiness grows, the temptation for a quick escape appears, and that's where many fall into the mistake of filling that space with the wrong company. We've reached the 7th point of this video. Don't rush into a relationship out of desperation or loneliness. This isn't about whether loving again is right or wrong. It's about whether you're choosing it freely or simply fearing being alone. Some people, after losing their spouse, feel like their life has lost all structure and desperately seek someone to fill the void, without asking themselves if that person is truly right for them. I've seen men and women dive into relationships just because they can't stand the silence at night, because they need someone to tell them what to do, because they mistake affection for dependence. And the problem isn't just that they end up in unfulfilling relationships. It's that these relationships often lead to even bigger issues: emotional abuse, financial manipulation, loss of identity. What started as a search for companionship turns into a prison even more suffocating than loneliness itself. Stoic philosophy teaches that true peace doesn't come from external things. It comes from our ability to be at peace with ourselves. Epictetus said, "If you look to others for happiness, you will be their slave." And that's exactly what happens when you enter a relationship just to avoid being alone. You become a prisoner of someone else's presence. Every decision revolves around keeping the relationship at all costs, even if it means sacrificing your peace, your finances, your independence. Because the fear of losing what little you have seems greater than the risk of ending up with nothing. If right now you feel tempted to fill your life with someone just to escape the silence, stop. Ask yourself, do I truly want this person, or do I just want to avoid being alone? Does this relationship add to my life, or is it just a distraction from a void I don't want to face? There's no greater mistake than handing your future to someone out of fear of facing yourself. Because loneliness is not the enemy. The real enemy is the desperation that leads you to make choices that go against your own peace. Yes, you have the right to love again. But you also have the responsibility to do it the right way, with awareness, with confidence that this person is a true choice, not just a lifeline you grabbed in panic. And if you're not ready for that, the best thing you can do is learn to be alone without fear. Because only when you realize that the most important company you have is yourself, will you be truly ready to share your life with someone else, without losing yourself in the process. If you've understood that you can't fill the void with just any company, and that being alone is not a sentence but an opportunity, then it's time to talk about the next big mistake. Because it's not enough to avoid the wrong relationships if, at the same time, you're neglecting the most important one of all, the relationship you have with yourself. And that brings us to the 8th point of this video. Don't put off your emotional and physical well-being. Many people abandon themselves without even realizing it. At first, it's subtle. You stop paying attention to how you feel, to what you eat, to whether you're sleeping well. You tell yourself it doesn't matter anymore, that at this stage, why bother making changes? Then your energy starts to fade, the days feel heavier, your motivation disappears. You look in the mirror and don't recognize the person staring back at you. And instead of asking yourself how to turn things around, you simply accept that this is just how life is now. But tell me, who decided that? Who declared that aging must mean inevitable decline? Yes, time moves forward, but that doesn't mean you have to surrender to it. This is where you must make a radical decision, to start treating yourself with the importance you deserve. Don't wait for your body to force you into it with illness. Don't wait for your mind to shut down before realizing you should have nourished it sooner. Today, right now, in this very moment, you can do something. You don't need a drastic change. You don't have to transform your entire life in a single day. You just need to take one step of self-respect. It could be going for a walk, swapping one unhealthy food for a better choice, or simply sitting in silence to check in with how you truly feel. The magnitude of the action doesn't matter. What matters is the decision to take it, because once you start moving in the right direction, momentum begins working in your favor. Seneca said, "As long as we live, let us learn how to live." And that's what you must remember. Taking care of yourself is not a luxury, not a vanity, not something you do only when you feel like it. It's a duty, because every day you spend neglecting yourself is a day you choose to live worse than you could. And if there's one thing we've learned in this video, it's that life doesn't pause and wait for us. Either you take control now, or you become a victim of your own excuses. So ask yourself, do I want to keep going through life on autopilot, or do I want to reclaim my right to feel good, to move with energy, to think with clarity? The answer is yours, and so is the decision. But remember this, no one will do it for you. If you've made it this far, you already know that change isn't just an option, it's a necessity. But you also know it's not easy, because every decision you make to improve your life will be met with an inner voice trying to hold you back. That voice will whisper that it's too late, that it's not worth it, that you don't have the energy or strength to do something different. That voice is fear. It's habit. It's every excuse that has kept you stuck. And that brings us to the 9th point of this video. Don't believe that your story ends here. Many people, after a great loss, fall into the trap of thinking that the best part of their life is behind them. They convince themselves that there's nothing new to look forward to, that all that's left is to keep going until time eventually takes them. And in doing so, they start fading away long before life decides to take them. But tell me, do you really believe the time you have left has no value? That the days you're living now are any less important than the ones you've already lived? Because if you're still breathing, if you're still waking up each morning, it means your story still has pages left to be written. The only question is, Will you be the author, or will you let inertia write it for you? The mind is always looking for reasons to stay still. I don't have the same energy anymore, some say. But energy doesn't just vanish, it's something you cultivate. And the first step to getting it back is to stop telling yourself you don't have it. Others say, I don't have anyone to share things with anymore. But since when do you need outside validation to enjoy your own life? Since when does happiness depend on someone else's presence? And then there are those who insist, at my age, what's the point? The point is this, so you don't reach the end of your life knowing you gave up too soon. So you don't become someone who only looks back with nostalgia instead of looking at the present with gratitude. Stoic philosophy teaches that while we don't control how much time we have left, we do control what we do with it. Marcus Aurelius said, "Do not act as if you were going to live 10,000 years. Death looms. While you live, while it is in your power, be good." And being good doesn't just mean toward others, it means toward yourself. It means refusing to become a shadow of who you once were. It means deciding that no matter the losses, no matter the scars, no matter how many times life has knocked you down, you still have the power to get up and make each day count. So look in the mirror and ask yourself the only question that truly matters. Will I keep living in the shadow of what was, or will I make the most of what I still have? The answer is yours. Because your story isn't over, and the worst thing you could do is act as if it were. If you've made it this far, it means you're part of the rare few who dare to face the truth head-on. Most people prefer distractions, choosing to ignore what hurts, convincing themselves that everything is fine even when, deep down, they feel themselves fading. But not you. You've listened until the end because you know that change requires confrontation, that a meaningful life demands taking full responsibility for every choice. What you do with what you've learned today is entirely up to you. You can close this video and continue as you have, letting time carry you along without resistance. Or you can take control, recognizing that you're still here for a reason and deciding that no matter what's behind you, what lies ahead will be lived with dignity, with strength, and with the certainty that you still have both the right and the responsibility to write your own story. Throughout this video, we've talked about mistakes that can cost you your stability, your peace of mind, and ultimately, your self-respect. But every mistake has its counterpart, an opportunity to do things differently. You don't have to change everything overnight. You don't need to have all the answers right now. You just need to take the first step, whatever that may be, toward the life you want to live. Because if you wait for perfect conditions, if you wait for fear to completely disappear, you'll be waiting until the end of your days. Don't let that happen. Don't let inertia decide for you. I want you to leave a comment with two things: your country and the phrase, "My story is still in my hands." Because if you've made it this far, I want to know who has truly understood this message. I want to see who has chosen to wake up. I'm Gabriel, and here at the Stoic Garden, we speak the truth. No empty promises, no easy comfort. This space isn't for those looking for distractions, it's for those seeking growth. And if you're one of those people, subscribe right now and join this community of people who have decided to take control of their lives, no matter their age, no matter their past, without waiting for the world's permission. Share this video with someone who needs it, because sometimes hearing an uncomfortable truth at the right moment is the push someone needs to change their path. And if you want to go deeper into these ideas, here are more videos that will open your eyes even further. Because this conversation doesn't end here. I'll see you in the next one.